Admittedly, I am not the pinnacle of reliability, but for the life of me, I will never understand why one would select an Explorer, a Highlander, or God help us, a crossover from the unreliability that is FCA or whatever they're calling themselves nowadays, when one could have this, something more at home in a war zone rather than a mall parking lot. Now I can completely understand not everyone can appreciate such a ringing endorsement, something about leading the horse to water. So today, you and I are going to drink of the knowledge that is one of the better real SUVs. Nissan Patrol or Armada, whatever they call it, one of our favorite vehicles, has recently experienced some changes, which is going to be a recurring theme throughout this episode. However, where we start is not one of the areas that has been changed. That would be the 5.6 V8, good for 400 horsepower and 413 pound-feet of torque. Now, you may remember a time when this engine in this vehicle, at least in the US, was less power than the Infiniti QX56 or QX80, whatever they're calling it now, even though they were the same vehicles. That is no longer the case. Pressing on drives either the rear wheels or all four wheels through a 7-speed torque converter automatic. Now, you're not going to be surprised to learn this really is not about performance, so let's just skip the performance figures and focus on utility. Towing, very respectable, 8,500 pounds. Fuel economy, did I mention this is a body-on-frame SUV? So, yeah, 13, 18, 15 combined. So hopefully you were not expecting a lightweight, 6,037 pounds, or depending how you express your weights and measures, 2,738 kilograms. Now, yes, if this was a two-wheel drive without all the fancy stuff in it, it would be lighter, but not by much. With that, okay, a little bit more relaxed, but oh yeah, it kind of wakes up about 4,000 RPM, pulls all the way to about 5,500 RPM. This is kind of an old school V8. I welcome that challenge because it's something you and I don't get very often. Nissan has been building this engine for quite a while, incredibly reliable and delivers good power. Granted, you've got to push it to get power out of it. This is more about off-roading. It is well blended with the 7-speed torque converter automatic. This is a good blend between something that has almost imperceptible shifts and something that fits the personality of this engine and really the job this vehicle is trying to do. Okay, so that's all fine and good, but what the hell does that mean to you and I? Well, the combination of a rather old world engine and a transmission that, if I'm honest, is down by a gear means it's a very relaxed package. And that translates to a package that isn't changed from the Patrol or Armada that came before it, which means it's incredibly capable off-road. We have proven that in many previous episodes, but it really is something that can be used around town and it won't beat you up. So do you guys remember 6, 7 years ago, we met Ken Lee, proper designer, I would say, a good car guy, but he's one of those tortured souls that has a fetish for French cars. He makes up for it by being into aviation. No, not general aviation aircraft, more commercial aviation aircraft. He is now kind of a big deal. He got promoted from Nissan Studio in America to over in Japan. He's working right under brother Alfonso. And he is the one that has become the design manager for probably one of the most iconic vehicles that Nissan makes. Now, putting aside his dalliance with the French cars, he was very smart here not to make a lot of change, because this is a vehicle for people who do not like change. They want to buy a vehicle like this or a Land Cruiser, drive it for 400,000 miles, either on-road or preferably off-road, and then it will not break, so much so you hand it to your child or somebody else, and then you go tear another one off the roll, which hopefully looks exactly the same as the one you had been driving for 20 years. Hence Ken's strategy here, by only fine-tuning the front of the vehicle to make it look more in line with other Nissan corporate design DNA, that's what the marketing people call it. They changed the rear. I don't think the rear is as successful as the front. Not only is it too upright below the backlight, but the very thick horizontal bar gets in the way of what is otherwise a very organic and rather pretty, if I say as a Greek man, arse end. Okay, now let's cover the stuff that hasn't changed, and that's everything underneath the vehicle, which means it's an independent suspension all the way around, including in the rear, 13.8-inch diameter rotors all the way around, and most importantly, pretty sizable, chunky stabilizer bars. It's a thicker stabilizer bar up front. And that really translates to unusually good ride quality, even when driving it around town. Now granted, most people are not going to do what you and I are doing right now. This is just to prove a point that it works. Then there is some control over squat and dive. That's where it's pretty good. Pitch, it's a tall vehicle with high ground clearance. Don't expect much control over the pitch. Then there's the steering, and it's what you'd expect from a vehicle that is designed to credibly go off-road, meaning it's direct, it works, it's just a bit light, nothing we can fault here because that's inherently what's been designed into it. And then we press on to kind of a dirty little secret about this vehicle. It has kind of a long wheelbase. It's almost as long as the new generation of Cadillac Escalade, meaning the wheelbase, and it's a couple of ticks shorter than a BMW X7 and a Mercedes-Benz GLS, but it's a bit longer than, say, like a fancy Ford Explorer, or absolutely longer in wheelbase than a Toyota Highlander. But what does that mean to you and I? Well, it translates to improved ride quality. You would look at this thing, it looks shorter than an Escalade, it looks shorter than a GLS, so you would think it would be choppy, wouldn't be as supple in the way it rides. Well, believe it or not, around town, it's kind of a luxury vehicle, and again, one that can incredibly go off-road, which very few can do this trick. It's really only two. It's this and the Land Cruiser, obviously the Lexus version as well, that can pull off doing dual duty credibly without degradation to one side or the other. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the Options game with today's contestant, a vehicle you and I last drove literally on the other side of the world, the UAE specifically, and at that, it was the forbidden fruit that is the Nismo edition, which sadly is not on offer here in the US. So let's press on to the one that is on offer in the US, the 2021 Nissan Armada four-wheel drive Platinum for a base price of $68,000. Now, I do feel it prudent to point out that the most, let's say, affordable Armada on offer in the US is two-wheel drive, and it would be $48,600. Now, the most basic four-wheel drive on offer in the US would be $51,600. Then we must press on to the color. Now here, yes, I am biased to dark metallic blues, but this one I'm more biased. Because yes, it looks pretty on the car, but more importantly, the name. You see, as a resident of the South Bay of Los Angeles, I am very happy to report the name of this color is Hermosa Blue. And while I don't live in Hermosa Beach, I live in the next town, can I just say, it's not only a wonderful town that's kind of like Mayberry on the Pacific, it has a first-rate police department. Anyway, let's press on to the only factory option that is fitted to this vehicle, and that would be the captain's chairs for $650. The only other thing we add here is the destination and handling from Kyushu, Japan, $1,495 for a total retail price of $70,145. So it's time for you and I to press on to another change, but I would argue bigger than what we discussed outside the vehicle, and that is inside the vehicle. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, this side of the interior and that side of the interior are virtually identical from the previous generation. What has changed is all this infotainment as well as some fine-tuning details. The thing most people noticed is that screen, and what they do in that screen is introduce a new Nissan operating system, which obviously can house wireless Apple CarPlay. They kind of pilfered the concept from BMW with the iDrive system, and really BMW's kind of done the heavy lifting here, where at first we all kind of hated that system, but they put the time into it to evolve it, and now it's something that's intuitive. However, what they do that many other OEMs do not do is a real volume knob and a tuning knob for the radio. This even doubles for like the bass, the treble. Can I say arigato gozaimasu? Now, being they sort of caught up with the times on the wireless Apple CarPlay, there is a Qi wireless charger to go with that down here. Then we press on to some color and trim items. And here there's some finer details going on. Like, for example, you can see on the steering wheel as well as throughout the vehicle, some really extended use of contrast stitching, which works in the vehicle. However, color and trim, can we have some help here? Like Brother Alfonso, this beautiful blue with this like grayish black interior, it's blah, it's like a dark cave. However, you knew that saddle would be a good choice because there is a saddle dash top and a saddle like piece of trim on the door. Can we reverse that? Make the rest of the interior saddle and then the top of the dash, to avoid the glare, make that black. Other than that, fantastic job in here, especially keeping the stuff that already worked. Now it's kind of closer to the Infiniti, if I'm honest, and frankly, I just much prefer the exterior design of this vehicle over the Infiniti. So over the years, you and I have driven many of these together, even jumped one, but throughout all those experiences, I have never shared with you a rather pertinent piece of information. This is one of the few vehicles that is on my list of cars that I would personally write a check for. Not finance, not lease. Now, considering it's not a 911, it's not an E63 wagon, it is probably too utilitarian for someone that has all the practicality of a 3-year-old. Why do I say that? Well, really, two reasons. Number one, when you go to a city like Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, or Miami, and you see an Explorer that's not a hybrid, or a Highlander that's not a hybrid, those are usually north of $50,000. And in terms of real world fuel economy, not much better than these, just saying. Which means we have to press on to the biggest reason. And that is when I'm watching TV and I see one of those UN humanitarian relief efforts in a country where running water is like a luxury, the vehicle the UN is driving, usually one of these. I don't know about you, I can't really think of a better endorsement than that. Which brings us to the wish list. And here I've got two things, one very small and one very big. The small one is, why do we have the small sunroof here? We've already determined this is kind of the size of an Escalade. Can't we have a panoramic sunroof? And then the big item. I get you want a name specific to the US and the history of Armada, but why, oh why, do you not call this a Patrol throughout the world? Think about what happens here. These cars come from Kyushu to the US, people rip the badges off, spend their own money after spending 68 grand on the car to buy a badge that says Patrol to make them think they're driving a Patrol, which really is a Patrol. So let's just forget that and call them a Patrol throughout the entire world. And this is the point of the episode where I turn it around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Is there anything else we should be adding to the wish list? And with that, the only other thing I have to say is back to the beautiful city of Hermosa Beach. And it is still one of the only cities in this country that does on a regular basis coffee with a cop, where you go to this area, in this case by the beach, you have a tent set up and you go and you hang out with cops, you have muffins and coffee, and you kind of talk about sports or Nissan Patrols that happen to have a color named after their city. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.